was actually a very good meeting. Cool, calm and collected. There was a lot of self-congratulation, which I think was deserved, because in many ways this was a historic meeting. It was NATO going back to its roots of collective defense as a deterrent to Russia. It was really about increasing defense expenditure to the levels that we were during the Cold War, so we're talking 5%. And on top of that, it was sort of a rebalancing of a new NATO where you have more balance and more Europe in it. And I think President Trump was very happy, the Secretary General was very happy. So there were those smiles around the table, regardless of the difficult situation that we're in.
I'll talk to you a little bit about that, because look, you have been part of an amazing diplomatic effort. I think you, the Secretary General, Mr. Rutte, I think Keir Starmer and others have really worked very hard on working out what the problems could be with the United States and sorting them out beforehand as well. It was a huge diplomatic effort. It looked from the outside as well. A lot of preparation went into it. Do you think the Americans are happy now that Europe is pulling its weight?
Yeah, I think the Americans are happy. And, I think there are two reasons why Europeans have woken up and smelt the coffee. One is sort of pressure, sometimes gentle, sometimes a little bit tougher, coming from the United States on increasing our defense expenditure. But the other one is self-interest. Finland has 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia. It's in our self-interest that NATO hikes up its defense expenditure. As far as my role is concerned, I see Finland more to be a small country in the back office, whereas it's the big guys, Mark Rutte, Macron, Starmer, and Merz who do a lot of the work. But we work together as a team and as an ally, as an alliance, and I think it worked out this time around.
Yeah, look, I mean, you joined NATO looking at that collective defence, and of course Article 5 has been mentioned an enormous amount. Lots of people trying to work out what Article 5 is, and something you and I have been looking at for years as well. Do you feel that the Mutual Defence Pact is intact? And people have talked about different interpretations of Article 5. As far as I can see, there's only one interpretation of Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, and there'll be a united response. Did that come up at all in the meeting?
No, not at all. I mean, it's 5% and Article 5. That's basically the overall package. And we have to remember that Article 5 has been used only one time, and that was 9/11. So that's when all the allies went out to help the United States, all for one, one for all. So I feel that, the United States, all of us, are very committed to Article 5, and NATO is probably stronger than it has ever been, ever during its over 80 years history.
There is a set of reports coming out that actually, in order to get the US endorsement, a couple of things needed to happen. One, Europe needed to step up and get to 5%. The other thing was a dropping of any implicit criticism of the Russians in the Russia-Ukraine war as well. Has NATO lessened its terse language on Russia and its involvement in Ukraine?
That is not my interpretation. I think the discussion that we had earlier was, should there be another Russia strategy? And we dropped that. Now, if you look at the wording in the one-page, 5-point declaration, it's very strong on Russia. I think it's self-evident that Europe has two key threats right now that NATO needs to work on. One is Russia, which is a security threat to all of Europe, not only Ukraine. And then, of course, the second one is terrorism. As far as Ukraine's irrevocable path towards NATO membership, that stands from previous declarations. So I think all's end that ends well, but we have to continue to work with the alliance. I think this summit was a success.
So I've heard from very high-placed politicians in Ukraine and throughout the EU that actually, despite talk of accession of Ukraine to NATO, that they don't think it will ever really happen in the medium term. Do you disagree with that?
Well, we are working at it in the long term. It is realistic to say that if one of the key member states of the alliance, in other words the United States, is against Ukraine's NATO membership at this particular moment, that it won't happen in short term or however you define medium term. But in the long term, there needs to be a path. Remember that the aim of Putin in the beginning was to annul Ukrainian independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity. And for me, sovereignty is about the right to choose. And in my mind, it happens with two choices. One is a choice of EU membership, which will happen, and I hope eventually also a NATO membership for Ukraine, because it is the strongest military alliance in the world.
But difficult to see even the former, which is the easiest of the two, the EU membership rather than NATO, difficult to see even that whilst this war goes on. And sir, having been in Kyiv in 2014 and having seen what's happened since 2022, I can't see at the moment a path to peace. Can you?
Well, we're working on it. We've been working on it, I would argue, ever since President Trump came into office. I mean, we have weekly conversations, daily conversations. We exchange ideas. And from a Finnish perspective, we work on two things. One is a ceasefire, which is unconditional. That's basically when the killing stops. It does not mean an end to the war. And then the second phase is the actual peace process and the peace negotiations, when you discuss territory, compensation, war crimes, and these kinds of things. So we have to keep on working at it, but I think we're in a clear situation. The United States has proposed a ceasefire. Ukraine has accepted a ceasefire. Europe supports a ceasefire, and the only one breaking that ceasefire is Russia. So we need to keep on putting pressure on Russia that they come to the negotiating table, because I'll be very frank with you, Russia has not basically given up its main aim, and the main aim has been from the beginning to destroy Ukraine, and we have to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Do you think more sanctions are necessary?
Oh yes, definitely. So that's what
Does the United States, sir?
We hope so. We hope so. So basically you have a double whammy of sanctions. One is the 18th package of the European Union, which EU leaders will be discussing tomorrow. And the other one is the big package by Senator Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal, which is bone-breaking in many ways. And we're just sort of waiting for the President and the United States to use this as a threat, because the only thing that Putin understands is power, and the Russian economy is doing very poorly at the moment, and if a sanctions package is put forward, it might just bring them to the negotiating table.
On another thornier issue closer to home, sir, I normally see Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister, and get a couple of questions into him on the arrivals. He decided not to today. Tell me about what happened between Spain and the United States in the meeting.
There wasn't really a conversation between the two of them. It was very much a traditional NATO tour de table. So there wasn't a conversation about that. But I think the declaration is self-evident, as the Secretary General has said, that we are all committed to reaching the 5% target, which means 3.5% hard military and 1.5% then supporting it. But remember, one final point. You don't fight wars, or you don't have deterrence based on percentages. You have it based on capabilities.
Yeah, and I think that's what Pedro Sanchez is saying. But I just want to clarify, sir, Spain has signed up to 3.5% military spending, as far as you understand it.
I cannot speak for the government of Spain. I can only speak for Finland, and I can speak for the alliance by and large. My interpretation, our interpretation, is that there's very little flexibility of leeway. 5% it is.
But that's confusing me and the rest of the watching world, sir. We thought that Spain was saying, no, we cannot go to those kind of levels. It was about capabilities, about how we use the money, and we were just not going to go for 3.5 and 5. And now you're telling me that there's no room for flexibility in the communique?
Okay, I don't want to be too technical, but there's something called NDPP.
Please be technical, yeah.
Which is basically our targets. And our targets are based on two pillars. One is defense planning or military planning, and then the other one is basically defense capabilities. And these two, or operations, these two are now coming together. So and they are tested once a year. So if Spain is able to provide proof to SECURE and the alliance that it has all the capabilities for less bang for the buck, then that's a good thing, but we'll see.
But that's a get-out-of-jail card for everyone who doesn't want to spend 3.5%, isn't it, sir?
No, because here we come to the fundamental misunderstanding. You do not build capabilities with percentages. You do not fight wars with percentages. You don't create deterrence with percentages. You do that basically by having capabilities, and that's what the alliance is all about. The percentages are a target, and the rest of it is defense.
So when the Americans first came to NATO in 2018 under President Trump and said, you guys have got to spend more money and stop using our defense to fund your hydrocarbons, Finland wasn't in NATO, of course. So a lot has moved on from that. Now the President's come back another time, and it looks like, again, the diplomacy has worked very well. Do you fear that the US is going to come back a third time under President Trump and ask for more from European allies?
I don't fear anything. I just deal with realities, and I'm very happy that the United States put pressure on the alliance to increase defense expenditure. And I say this because it is in our vested interests as a border country to Russia that the whole alliance spends a lot on defense in this world political situation.